Currently, there are 4 men trying to get to that House on the GOP side. Could there be more? The USA Today Gallup poll, a couple of interesting questions. Is the GOP presidential campaign hurting the party? There you see not hurting, 57%. Next question, Republican nomination better for the candidate to win during the primaries? 66% in this poll said that, and 29% said let the convention pick. It's been decades since there was a truly brokered convention. The most notable, 1940, when Wendell Willkie emerged as the Republican nominee. He had actually been a Democratic delegate in 1932. A little trivia there. But what is a brokered convention? What is a contested convention? What does it mean, and why is it being talked about? Mara.
Well, it's being talked about because this race is going on longer than people expected, and Mitt Romney is having trouble sewing this up. A brokered convention technically is when somebody brokers a deal. We don't have brokers anymore. Those are the people who would go into the back rooms and smoke some cigars and come out with a nominee. You could have a convention that's contested, meaning somebody doesn't show up in Tampa with 1,144 delegates, which is what you need to be the nominee. If somebody comes in without that number, he's going to have to convince somebody else to release their delegates to him. There could be multiple ballots. That would be an extraordinary spectacle. There's plenty of time between the end of the primaries and the convention for that kind of horse trading to go on. It doesn't necessarily have to happen on the convention floor.
So let's just say brokered is likely out of the question.
I think so.
Contested, maybe more of a chance, but still not probable, Steve.
I would say it's still unlikely, and probably you could say still very unlikely. And the idea that another candidate would get in at this point, it's possible, it's theoretically possible, but the problem is for Republicans is there is no other candidate. I mean, everybody who's been talked about has said, I'm not interested in this, and at this point I think you have to believe that they're really not interested in this. There are 2 reasons, though, that I think this contest will go on for a long time, and it could ultimately result in a contested convention. One is momentum, and the other is proportionality. Momentum, we haven't seen much, and it doesn't last. It doesn't mean anything. So one candidate will win 1 week, and 2 weeks later, they lose. And every time we've thought that somebody was building momentum, the reverse has happened. Proportionality, the way that Republicans are conducting this race is very different from the way that they've done this in the past. And these contests coming up from this point forward, basically, are going to be, with the exception of Arizona, March on, are going to be allocating delegates on a proportional basis, which means that there's no incentive whatsoever, as long as a candidate can buy a plane ticket to the next state, there's no incentive whatsoever to get out before the convention.
David.
Steve makes some good points, and I'd add that if we actually were to get to a contested convention, I think Republicans would be in a world of trouble for November. First of all, you'd have the whole summer go by with no real campaign that was building up and getting ready to take on the president and starting to hit the president. The convention is scheduled for late August, basically, or late August, early September.
And traditionally, it's been a rehabilitation moment, right, where an angry party could then take their nominee and say, look how great this person is, and isn't he the best person to run against the president?
And there's a reason, because no news generally happens per se, and so why not have it basically near Labor Day so you can get your bump in the polls and pivot and head into the home stretch of the election with all guns blazing. If you end up with a candidate that is not picked until the convention, they're going to have no time to put together the kind of campaign they need to hit the president. And the president's basically going to get a pass until September in terms of being actually attacked in a real fashion every day, and it's going to be horrible for Republicans that are interested in winning the White House.
Can I disagree with that slightly? If there were to, if one of these other Republicans who have indicated that they don't want to run, let's say a Jeb Bush or a Paul Ryan or a Mitch Daniels, if one of those candidates were to sweep in at a convention and emerge from the convention as a nominee, and if you are one of the, depending on the poll, 50, 65% of Republicans who are not happy with this field, I think you'd get pushback from some Republicans and a lot of conservatives who would say, look, it will be a messy process, but if we end up with a better candidate than the ones that we've watched to this point, that might be a good result.
And all those voters, you're going to diss all those voters
who voted in all of those states, they would be pretty
really, talk about democracy. That is really a slap in the face for every one of those people.
Candidates to release delegates, but I'm talking about putting together a campaign that can function. And actually, and the president, if you want to soften him up, I mean, they should be starting in March, and they're not going to start in
But they're not going to start in March no matter what happens. And if you look at some of the exit polls, you're finding people who have cast ballots who say that they would still like another
Steve, he snuck that in under the wire. Sorry, Mara. Something tells me we'll be talking about this again. That's it for the panel, but stay tuned.